Hello, I'm Vela Morrison, and I'm going to be talking about adapting your house for the whole family at the Online Disability Show. I'm speaking as an architect with a background in home design, but also as a member of a family with access needs. Pre-kids, I worked as a housing architect. I really enjoy the challenge of home redesign projects. It's so rewarding to see what a difference a bit of lateral thinking, sometimes just a few small changes, can make to the way a house works for people. Two of the key things are often circulation and storage. We're now a family of four. Our 9-year-old daughter has a rare genetic condition, CAT6A syndrome, and has multisensory impairments, learning disabilities, and she uses mobility aids. Becoming a mum has widened my understanding of what good inclusive design looks like, but also means that we've had first-hand experience of navigating the confusing home adaptations process. Like most families with access needs, we had three options. We could move, but of course accessible homes are few and far between on the private sale market and almost none on the private rental market. We could look to social housing, but again, a lack of properties means that any that do come up are in high demand, and most are actually 1 or 2 bedroom flats, not family homes. Or we could adapt, and this is the easiest option for us as designers, and thankfully my daughter does qualify for a Disabled Facilities Grant, a DFG. None of these options are a quick fix, and all involve a large amount of upheaval, stress and cost. And for that reason, combined with a lack of choice, I think many people, like you and like us until now, just struggle on continuing to try and manage until they can't cope or it gets to crisis point. Starting the process. To adapt your existing home, the first step is usually to establish if you qualify for a DFG. In general, children do qualify, although there is a process to determine the need for home adaptations, and sometimes this can be a bit grey, especially when the need is for sensory or neurodiverse reasons rather than mobility ones. For adults, the process is also means tested. A really helpful source of information for DFG questions and answers is the Foundation's HIA website, foundations.co.uk.com. If you qualify for a DFG, there will often be a specific team and housing improvements agency who your county council work with. It's worth highlighting that there is actually a fee payable for the agency services. Alternatively, you can employ your own designer or architect and select your own builder, as long as you satisfy the council that the work that the grant will be spent on is appropriate and meets the person's clinical needs. The assessment for this is usually carried out with the OT service. If you're looking for an architect, the RIBA website is a good place to start, and there are regional RIBA offices who can usually advise you on local designers. RIBA also have a brochure about what to expect when employing an architect and what to expect at each stage of work. As well as the specific design issues relating to accessibility, the other main considerations you might have to think about when doing a larger adaptations project are planning permission. This is an application to the local authority if you are making any changes to the outside of your home, particularly if extending. Listed building consent. If your house is listed building consent will be required for most changes, inside and out. Building regulations are usually dealt with by the same department as planning permission, but are a slightly different set of requirements. Building regulations are about the building structure and performance, like the heating, services, fire safety, etc. They may be required for building work even if you don't need planning permission. Other legislation that might be relevant during a building project are the Party Wall Act, if your work is on or near your boundary, and the CDM regulations, which are like health and safety at work regulations for builders working on your home. When you come to employ a builder, it's generally recommended to obtain 3 quotes to get a competitive price. If you have an architect to oversee the project, they will usually administer the building contract and will advise you on the options for this. But if you're managing the work yourself, it's definitely worth looking at the various standard types of contracts available. These will help you to clarify responsibilities, like how long the building will take and what's the agreed price, when and at what intervals do you pay. The general principles of accessible home design for new homes is part 4 of the building regulations. There are 3 categories. M41, category 1 is visitable, basic access features, level access, entrance where possible, and step-free access to a loo. M42 is category 2, which is called adaptable. It's similar to a previous standard called Lifetime Homes, and its marginal additional cost compared to its less inclusive equivalent. M43, category 3, is wheelchair accessible. It's a slightly larger home, fully designed for a typical wheelchair user. Unfortunately, unless individual planning authorities set criteria in their local plan, M41, visitable, is the default standard. The standards are not a requirement for renovations either, but they are a helpful guide for the sort of thing you need to think about in your own home. Of course, even when a house is built to these overall standards, individuals may require some person-specific adaptations, so flexibility is always the key. If you need wheelchair accessibility, I'd recommend looking at the Wheelchair Housing Design Guide by Hab and Teg. But for general inclusive features, I would tend to look at Lifetime Homes rather than Part M42. This description in the Lifetime Homes Guide is the essence of inclusive design for me, and is really a summary of how I think all homes should be designed. Lifetime homes are all about flexibility and adaptability. They are not special, but are thoughtfully designed to create and encourage better living environments for everyone. From raising small children to coping with illness or dealing with reduced mobility in later life, Lifetime homes make the ups and downs of daily living easier to manage. There are 16 criteria in Lifetime Homes, and you can see more detail at their website, lifetimehomes.org. They include such things as thresholds and doorways. It can be a deal breaker when it comes to making your home visitable. Most existing homes have a doorstep. It's the simplest way to keep water out. However, it can be a tricky problem to overcome depending on how much space you have for ramps. If there's an opportunity to create level access when you're doing other building work, even if you don't need level access at the moment, it can save a potential headache in the future and make it easier for any disabled visitors or young families with prams. Circulation inside the house should be wide enough for wheelchair access, but wider doors aren't always enough on their own. Doors in narrow corridors may need to be wider to allow easy turn as you go through, and doors should be kept away from corners of rooms and corridors to make it easier to reach the door handles. When planning a house, designers can also think of a sensible place that could be adapted to take a vertical lift, if it's ever needed in the future, choosing a location that wouldn't impact on social spaces and bedrooms. I believe everyone should have these inclusive criteria in mind when searching for a new home or making significant alterations to their home. After all, we spend our cash, we invest our hearts in our homes, so why wouldn't we want to make sure they are as welcoming to our friends and family as possible? I think one of the barriers to more accessible housing is the image people have of an accessible home and the lack of inspiring products and fittings. People often feel that they have to take what's suggested from the approved suppliers list, or they're at crisis point when carrying out adaptations, and the result can feel clinical and compromised. I think this phenomenon potentially puts people off to improve their home accessibility, as I think they feel it's like giving in or admitting you're old, feeling things are being forced on you, or simply feeling that it's too much of a compromise on your home style. I want to challenge the perception that an inclusive home is all about ugly ramps and plastic grab rails. If access is at the heart of a design, it doesn't need to affect style at all. And when it comes to fittings, we shouldn't have to settle for ugly and clinical. There is choice out there now, like grab rails that combine function with regular home accessories, like towel rails or shelving racks to integrate into the room design. The more inclusive design becomes standard and is demanded by consumers, the more and more, I hope, good products will become available. Our project. Because my daughter has learning, sensory, and physical disabilities, we want to make sure we consider all of her, not just tackle the more apparent physical needs in our adaptations. It's also crucial that we consider everybody else in the home and not end up compromising family space. Both are things I think people often feel are pushed out of the picture during adaptations. For us, this is a long-term plan and want to build in as much flexibility as possible to future-proof our home. Jay would need help to operate a lift, so the only sensible option for us is a ground floor extension to create a bedroom and an accessible bathroom for her, with direct access for her to crawl, wheel, or walk from her room into the family spaces. For greater independence as a young adult, her room could be made more separate from the shared spaces, and a new side door would allow PAs to visit without coming through the house. As we are top-up funding our DFG, I know we are lucky to have a degree of autonomy in the process. However, all adaptations should take a holistic approach, and there is a very valid argument that to take a short-term approach, it can be more wasteful, perhaps leading to further invasive work being required, or things having to be taken out in the future. In some instances, like a poorly located lift, it could also compromise the value of the home and leave people much worse off. To help illustrate that an accessible home can be just as beautiful as any other, here are a few examples by access specialists Chambers Macmillan Architects. This beautiful home, the Ramp House, is their own home in Edinburgh. It's a fantastic award-winning example of how a house designed around a whole family with their disabled daughter's needs at the heart results in an amazing ideal home, not an institutional grab rail in sight. And this home is a remodel of a bungalow. It's amazing how so many bungalows are not very accessible at all. But by moving the front door, they have been able to lose all the narrow corridors and simplify the circulation, allowing the family spaces to become open plan and spacious. Inclusive design is for all generations and all abilities. TV and the home design magazines are full of lovely wide open plan houses, level garden patios, lots of things that are compatible with inclusive design and wheelchair circulation. But there's barely ever a mention of access or inclusion, or even future-proofing. We need them to be celebrating it. Why not discuss pram and buggy access in the context of the typical young pregnant couple embarking on their grand design? They're always pregnant. Isn't that a great media hook to mention wheel access? I also believe more older people may be more inclined to improve their home's access before crisis point if they felt it was of benefit for their younger relatives rather than as an acknowledgement of ageing. The main goal is to show people that if society is serious about inclusion and equality, all design should be inclusive. It's simply well considered planning and flexibility. And from a purely commercial point of view, government statistics are telling us that 20% of families have a member who needs better access to retail, the purple pound. So shouldn't the home media, house builders and estate agents be seeing this as an opportunity? Good accessible design is good sellable design. There needs to be more emphasis on accessibility in home quality and sustainability accreditations which could help strengthen the perceived value of access among developers, agents, and mainstream home buyers. I guess the average person may think it negative to think about old age, illness, or accident when looking to buy or build or do up their home. But most of us have financial insurance and pensions for those things, so why not think about our homes as bricks and mortar insurance policy? There is no reason people should see an inclusive design as anything other than positive. And just as any other home, they can be amazing, stylish, and beautiful. Indeed, how can a home be considered ideal if it's not inclusive? I love to share inclusive and accessible design ideas, so please do come and find me on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to the Online Disability Show for having me.